Have you ever had a fever and thought, this is it, I'm done? Yeah, same. But here's the truth. Your ancestors survived things that would put you in the hospital for a week. And they did it without a single pill. No antibiotics. No painkillers. No doctors. No hospitals. Nothing. And they didn't just survive. They thrived long enough to create you. So how? Let's start with what you already know. You've gotten sick before. Maybe a cold. Maybe the flu. Maybe something worse. And you probably took medicine. You felt better. Done. That's the modern way. But for 99% of human history, that wasn't an option. There was no pharmacy on the corner. There was no WebMD. There was just you, your body, and whatever your community knew. So what did they know? They knew plants. They knew that chewing a certain root stopped a headache. They knew that drinking tea from a specific bark brought down a fever. They knew that applying a particular moss to a wound kept infection out. And they were right. Modern science has confirmed most of it. Take willow bark. You've heard of aspirin, right? Aspirin is synthetic. The real thing comes from willow trees. Ancient Egyptians used it. Ancient Greeks used it. Native Americans used it. They didn't know about salicylic acid. They didn't know about prostaglandins. They just knew it worked. And it did. That's not luck. That's thousands of years of trial and error passed down through generations. But that's just one example. Let's look at Ötzi the Iceman. You've probably heard of him. He's a 5,300-year-old mummy found frozen in the Alps. And when scientists studied his gear, they found something interesting. He was carrying birch polypore mushrooms. Those mushrooms have antibiotic properties. They also have laxative effects. Why would a guy crossing a mountain carry that? Because he had parasites. The scientists found whipworm eggs in his intestines. He was treating himself. 5,300 years ago. With mushrooms. Now let's go further back. Way further. The Neanderthals. You probably think of them as dumb cavemen. But they were using medicinal plants 60,000 years ago. Scientists found plant DNA in their dental plaque. Yarrow, chamomile, poplar. Poplar contains salicylic acid. That's aspirin again. They were self-medicating. Before modern humans even existed in Europe. Before writing. Before farming. They were doing chemistry without knowing it. But plants weren't the only tool. They also had surgery. Trepanation. You might not know that word. It means drilling a hole in someone's skull. Sounds insane, right? But prehistoric humans did it. And here's the part that will mess with your head. Many of those patients survived. Scientists have found skulls with healed bone around the drill holes. That means people live for years after having their heads drilled open. With stone tools. No anesthesia. No antiseptic. And yet they survived. How? Blood clots. The brain doesn't actually feel pain. The scalp does, yes. But the brain itself has no pain receptors. And the body's natural clotting response stops bleeding if you're careful. Plus the hole relieves pressure. That's what trepanation was for. Head injuries, migraines, seizures. They didn't know about intracranial pressure, but they knew the symptoms. They knew the treatment. And it worked. But let's be clear. A lot of them died. Child mortality was brutal. Hunter-gatherer child mortality could be as high as 40 to 50%. That's not an exaggeration. Almost half of all children born didn't make it past 15. And adults didn't do much better. A 2017 study estimated that average lifespan for early humans was around 35 to 40 years. That's assuming you survived childhood. If you made it past 15, you could live into your 70s or 80s. But a lot of people didn't make it. So how did anyone survive at all? Two things. Community and knowledge. Let's talk about community first. When you got sick as a prehistoric human, you didn't isolate. You were cared for. There's evidence from Shanidar Cave in Iraq. A Neanderthal skeleton. He was old. He was crippled. He had arthritis. He had a missing arm. He had been blind in one eye. He had a severe head injury. And he lived a long time. Someone fed him. Someone protected him. Someone cared for him for decades. That's not a theory. That's a skeleton with healed bones. He couldn't have survived alone. His community kept him alive. And that's the pattern. Humans survived sickness because they had each other. You don't heal from a broken leg alone. You can't hunt with a fever. You can't forage with an infected wound. But if someone brings you food and water and medicine, you have a chance. And that's what happened. Communities carried the sick. They fed them. They protected them. Now let's talk about the second piece. Knowledge. That knowledge was carried by healers. Shamans. Medicine people. They weren't just spiritual leaders. They were the doctors. They knew which plants worked and which ones killed you. They knew which rituals helped and which ones did nothing. They were the ones who performed trepanation. They were the ones who set broken bones. They were the ones who delivered babies. And that knowledge was the difference between life and death. A fascinating discovery in the Levant is an Ethiopian shaman burial from 12,000 years ago. A woman buried with over 50 animal parts in her grave. She was clearly someone important. And one of the things buried with her? Animal bones that have been linked to medicinal use. She wasn't just a leader. She was a healer. That's the oldest known shaman burial ever discovered. And it shows that medicine and spirituality were the same thing back then. Now let's talk about fever for a minute. You've had fevers. You've taken ibuprofen to bring them down. But here's the thing. Fever is your immune system on high alert. When you get sick, your body raises its temperature to kill bacteria. It's a defense mechanism. Your ancestors didn't suppress fevers. They let them run. They didn't know about white blood cells. They didn't know about cytokines. But they knew that fever meant your body was fighting. And they were right to let it work. That's the hidden truth. Your body already knows how to heal itself. It just takes time and support. That's what ancient humans did. They gave themselves time. They gave each other support. And their immune systems did the rest. But here's the uncomfortable part. A lot of them died anyway. And that's okay. That's the trade-off. The human immune system is incredibly powerful. But it's not perfect. And prehistoric medicine wasn't either. But the ones who survived passed on their genes. They passed on their immune systems. They passed on their knowledge. And that's how we got here. So now let's talk about something that will surprise you. Inflammation. You've heard of inflammation, right? It's bad. It causes arthritis, heart disease, cancer. But inflammation is also your body's first line of defense. When you get cut, inflammation brings fluid and cells to the wound. That fluid has proteins that kill bacteria. That's why cuts get red and swollen. And your ancestors had the same response. They just didn't know what it was. But they worked with it. They cleaned wounds. They applied plants. They let the process happen. One of the most famous studies on ancient infection is the antibiotics found in Neanderthal bones. Let's revisit that. The dental plaque evidence is overwhelming. Neanderthals were using poplar and yarrow. Poplar is a natural painkiller. Yarrow stops bleeding. It's common in the field today. And they had those tools 60,000 years ago. But here's the part that really matters. They didn't just use these plants once. They used them repeatedly. The plaque showed long-term use. That means this wasn't accidental. It was intentional. It was learned. It was passed down. Now let's compare that to medieval Europe. Medieval Europe was a nightmare. Plagues, poor sanitation, no understanding of germs. And yet, if you go back further, to hunter-gatherers, they were actually cleaner in some ways. They moved around. They didn't stay in one place with piles of trash and human waste. They didn't have crowded cities full of disease. And they had herbs. They had knowledge. A fascinating study in the journal Nature Genetics from 2013 analyzed ancient dental calculus from hunter-gatherers and early farmers. The hunter-gatherers had more diverse oral bacteria. That's a good thing. Diversity means resilience. The farmers had fewer species and more cavities. That's the result of eating grains. The hunter-gatherers had healthier teeth. Not because they brushed, but because they ate different things. And they used antimicrobial plants. The late Pleistocene hunter-gatherer lifestyle included regular use of fibrous plants and a starch-free diet. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than what came later. Now let's think about the bigger picture. Ancient humans survived sickness because of three things. Number 1, biology. Number 2, community. Number 3, knowledge. Biology gave them an immune system that had been evolving for millions of years. It wasn't perfect, but it was effective. They also had pain tolerance. They could handle discomfort without panicking. They didn't think every headache was a brain tumor. They didn't have that fear, because they didn't have that concept. Community gave them support. When you're sick, you can't hunt. You can't gather. You can't protect yourself. Someone else does it for you. That's what families and tribes are for. That's the evolutionary advantage of social animals. We help each other survive. And knowledge was their backup plan. They didn't have medical journals, but they had oral tradition. The shaman who knew which plant stopped bleeding taught the next shaman. The mother who knew how to treat a fever taught her daughter. That knowledge accumulated over thousands of years. It was trial and error on a generational scale. And it worked. Now here's the reframe. Most people think modern medicine is the only reason we're alive today. But that's not true. Modern medicine is the reason we live past 80. It's the reason we survive car crashes. It's the reason we don't die from appendicitis. But it's not the reason we survived as a species. We survived because of our own bodies, our communities, and our knowledge of the world around us. Doctors didn't save us. We saved ourselves. And that means something. It means you're stronger than you think. Your body knows what to do. Your immune system is smarter than any drug. And your ancestors proved that human beings can survive almost anything. Not because they had tools. Not because they had science. But because they had each other. So next time you get sick, remember that. You're not alone. You never were. Your body is fighting. Your community is there. And all the knowledge you need is already inside you. You just have to trust it. That's the truth. You actually survived it.